Good morning, everyone. My name is Benjamin Teitelbaum. I'm Program Manager at the Commission for Environmental Cooperation. And welcome to the CECTalks. This is a series that we started a little while ago that enables us to have some participation from a broader audience that's concerned with sustainability and innovation that we are talking about today, but from a broader audience in North America. So we're going to be live on this CECTalks webcast. We're going to be doing this in webcasting in French, English, and Spanish. The English, for those of you who are going to be listening to the Spanish translation, the English is going to be on number 1, the Spanish number 2, and the French on number 3. As you know, just as an introduction to the project that we're going to be discussing today, as you know, the auto sector is one of those sectors that's really highlights the kind of seamless supply chain that functions in North America. The automobile sector, the automobile manufacturing sector, is a global industry, but in particular we're focused on the North American components, which is really a seamless border between Mexico, Canada, and the U.S., where parts are interchanged in each direction and form the basis of a continuous manufacturing process. The manufacturing environmental challenges we face in North America are to build cars sustainably and precisely as the auto industry tries to harness the innovation and restructuring of a world market and North American marketplace. Our project focuses on greening the automobile supply chain by helping each other and finding the links that exist between our 3 countries and our 3 different sectors of the automobile manufacturing sector. The use of recycling materials, better management of resources, be it in energy, waste, and a really important area that's coming up for a lot of you, water management. How do we deal with, and not just in water management in areas where the resource is scarce, but water management in general. We started this project in 2009 with focus with an initiative that had already been on the ground working in the United States, which is the Suppliers Partnership, which you are members of, some of you, and welcome to the other guests that are here today. The Suppliers Partnership was an initiative that was started in the United States with the support of the EPA, and we used it as a model to see if we can expand that concept to both Mexico and to Canada. And I think we've been fairly successful. It's been a long journey and a learning journey at the same time to try to understand each of the different countries and each of their manufacturing supply chains and how we can best support those things. But I think we're going to hear today some of the results of that initiative. I think it's really been a very successful opportunity for all the 3 countries. The forum that will demonstrate that we can show some of the best practices that we have in North America and share those amongst us and see how we can then use those best practices to support each other and to find opportunities to facilitate innovation and the introduction of innovation into the manufacturing process. Without taking too much longer, because you're going to be more interested in hearing from our panelists than from me, I'd like to introduce Matt Roche, a journalist from the CBS in Detroit who has been covering the technology and auto sectors for many years. He will be moderating the discussion, and I welcome him today and the rest of the panelists.
All right. Yeah. Assuming this is working, I think we're all set here. Thank you very much, Benjamin, and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, both here in the room and in the webcast. For those of you who are from the Detroit area, my voice is probably somewhat familiar, if not my face. I am a reporter at WWJ News Radio 950, that is the CBS All News radio station here in Detroit. And I think we're having some trouble with the mic here. All right. Okay, is this better? secret switch. Okay, now we're on. Anyway. Okay, going back, my name is Matt Roush. I'm a reporter at CBS Detroit. That is WWJ News Radio 950. That's the CBS All News radio station here in town. I produce for them a daily email newsletter called the Technology Report that covers high tech from a Michigan perspective. I've been doing this report since September of 2001. It covers hardware, software, advanced manufacturing, life sciences, and green technologies. And it's through the advanced manufacturing and green technologies that, that's how my interests lie here with you today. And I am going to be really interested to hear what our panel says about advancing green manufacturing in the North American automotive industry and how we can all, make the vehicles we drive a little bit greener, not only the vehicles themselves, but the process used to manufacture them. Should you wish to read anything that I do, I'll give you my 5-second commercial. It's cbsdetroit.com, and there's a link right in the middle of it that says Tech Report. So cbsdetroit.com, and then click on Tech Report, and you'll see the kind of journalism that I've been doing here in Detroit for almost 12 years now. Today we have with us Louis Lara, manager of the Environmental Quality Office at Ford Mexico. Gary Bates, senior environmental toxicologist at ERA Environmental Management Solutions, a Canadian software company that shows manufacturing industries how their materials and processes affect the environmental performance. Matt Bogosian, U.S. EPA Senior Policy Counsel in the Office of Chemical Safety and Pollution Prevention, who leads efforts by the EPA and the Obama administration to help manufacturers and their supply chains profit by adopting more sustainable practices. And finally, last but certainly not least, Dr. Amanda Kurtzman, Manager of Facility Sustainability Initiatives across North America for General Motors. Remember, please, that this is an interactive discussion, so we encourage you to tweet your questions at CECWeb on Twitter using the hashtag CECTalks, or to message us or post us on the Commission's Facebook page. That's facebook.com/CEC Connect. We also welcome your questions here in the live audience at any time during the festivities here. If you have a burning question you want to ask this panel, do not hesitate to raise your hand and I will call on you immediately. You are the folks who have invested your time to be here today, so you're the people we're serving. And it's been my experience doing a lot of these panel discussions that these things sort of rise or fall on the quality of questions we get from the audience. So see how niftily I have put this on you if we bomb. So I want to start out with a question for Gary Vague. In recent years, we've seen more and more innovative approaches being developed to more sustainably produced cars. Can you talk about the role that suppliers play in this innovation process as opposed to the OEMs?
Okay, so if you look at compliance, there's a lot of regulatory agencies, the US EPA, Environment Canada, the Ministry in Mexico. And a lot of data is collected, provide reporting to the governmental agencies. That's a great starting point. In our business with the environmental data management, we're basically looking at the materials processed through the facilities. And the important role of the suppliers is the accuracy of the information that's being supplied to the OEMs. And this is, as Steve Kelly mentioned, I guess, a little while ago this morning about not being a perfect world. Well, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done, but in our business we're actually seeing the partnership of the vendors actually working with the OEMs to provide accurate information. As you know, in this automotive industry, there's constant changes going on vis-a-vis the consumer demand of the products that we want to drive, basically. So there's a lot of changes happening, but the role of the vendors to supply accurate data, and this all ties into the big, very large picture about sustainability.
Mm-hmm. Amanda, can you give me an example of something GM's learned from its suppliers in this regard in terms of sustainability?
Well, we view collaborating with our suppliers as one of the keys to sustainability. And actually, our upcoming sustainability report actually focuses on our relationship with our suppliers because it is one of the top 10 material issues for our company. We recognize that suppliers are critical partners in helping us reduce our own industry's environmental impact. And some of the ways that we collaborate with suppliers to make those connections is, for example, we try to build a strong relationship with our suppliers so that we understand their processes, we understand where they might be able to work together to bring innovative projects to reality. So one of the things that we've looked at, for example, was connecting GDC with mobile fuel recovery, and then we were able to create a part for our vehicles, for our Volt vehicles. And another example where we're engaging suppliers to really drive sustainability would be, for example, where we introduced FTS technologies to our supply base. And FTS, our Tier 1 suppliers, and FTS technologies, they've developed a paint technology that really reduces, it's energy efficient, it reduces emissions, reduces waste, and that helps drive sustainability in our supply chain. So we're really looking to expand our efforts, within our own organization, but also if we set our sights on significant progress, we need to collaborate with the supply chain as well.
Okay, thank you. Luis, Gary, and maybe Amanda as well, can you each give me a specific example of a new innovation recently developed or being developed that will improve the way cars are being manufactured here in North America?
Well, can you hear me? No. Yeah. Okay. Be sure that you're using your headsets because I want to speak in Spanish. Okay, here we go.
No. No. Wait. Ya está. The booth apologizes. He's not using the microphone. 1 second, please. We do apologize. We do not have any sound in the booth. 1 second, please.
No, we couldn't hear anything in the booth.
Oh, okay. You were speaking of a paint process that uses much less natural gas and water, correct?
Yeah, I'm just talking about the so-called three-wet system, paint system, okay? There is a system that allows to apply the three layers of the different covers that the vehicle has without having a previous or just a cure process between each other, okay? Mm-hmm. And that allows to reduce the amount of energy that it is consumed, okay? Natural gas specifically, and also the water that it is consumed in the process. In the plant of Cuautitlán, Mexico, where the new Fiesta is produced and exported to all America, mm-hmm. okay? It was one of the first facilities in which this process was implemented. And now the company is, let's say, spreading out the implementation of this process in all over the world. There are several plants also here in North America that are already moving to the three-wet paint process. But we really believe...
Can you tell us how much natural gas, how much less is used by this process?
Well, I think the typical process is to apply one layer of material and then bake that part, then apply the other part. Yeah. Here, the process allows you to apply the 3 typical layers, okay?
While they're all still wet, right?
Yes, they are also wet, okay? Yeah. And you only have a baked oven at the end of the process. So that in terms of energy consumption, that really makes this process less intensive in energy consumption.
Okay. The interpretation is now working, we understand, so those of you who going forward will be able to use it. So go ahead. A specific example, if you care to, either of you folks of an improvement. Gary, Amanda.
Well, you know, I had already shared a similar discussion about FTS technologies. Another type of collaboration with suppliers, an example would be where we understood Federal Mogul's processes well enough that we were able to work with them to develop a method to turn old cardboard into vehicle headliners. So, you know, there's just endless opportunities for those types of collaborations, and it's just building those relationships with your suppliers to really understand what they might be able to bring to the table.
Okay, Matt, I want to get you involved here. Let's talk a little bit about public-private partnerships, collaboration with a government agency like the EPA and the role they play, you know, in increasing sustainability programs. You know, we've all heard the joke about the I am from the government and I'm here to help you. Right. In this case, actually true. How about that? Yeah.
Right. So, of course, my agency, the U.S. EPA, is most often known about that minimum standard, those rules, you know, that prevent the worst pollution. And those are important, and those rules in and of themselves in many ways drive innovation, the minimum standards. And there's plenty of examples that you could lay out over time, from catalytic converters on and on, about how that has driven innovation in the auto industry and in America in general. In fact, the President talked about that yesterday at his speech with the National Climate Action Plan at Georgetown University yesterday. And so I'm at one agency and part of the administration that is trying to put all the government agencies in a position to be smarter in how we not only set that minimum standard, but do activities above the minimum standard that draw performance up to higher standards. We have lots of, some people call them voluntary programs. You've heard, Matt, you know, about Energy Star, right? We all have that on our dishwashers, I hope, and our refrigerators. That's the kind of thing that draws performance up to higher standards. Same thing goes for the auto industry. So in this supply space, we have a 10-year relationship with a sister agency, the Department of Commerce, that has the National Institute of Standards and Technology. And within that, they have this place-based effort called the Manufacturing Extension Partnership. These are locally led efforts in all of our 50 states that have over decades built a trusting relationship with our manufacturing supply chain, including auto suppliers. So about 10 years ago, our agency, many of you know our senior scientist, Tom Murray, who's here with us today, he and many other experts in our agency and others have been working with those local contact points to bring best practices, best technical assistance to empower suppliers to get on that continuous improvement path to make smarter products and make more money, at the same time get the co-benefits of sustainability to protect people from the pollution and the planet.
Okay. All right, once again, I want to encourage all of you, any of you, to ask any questions here in the room, and also our audience on the webcast, if you would, please.
We have a question here submitted via email that I'm going to ask right now from a Michelle Martinez, asked in Spanish. By not having a CO2 emission standard, is the Mexican auto industry left out of international competition, given that the U.S. and Canada do have a standard?
Okay, I think that in order to answer that question, it is important to provide some background. And Mexico was the second country that issues a climate change regulation, and that happens about a year ago in June 2012, and now it is under discussion the rules that will apply for that regulation. I will also have to mention that Mexico is really very active in participating in voluntary programs, and for this part of a voluntary initiative since 2005, okay, in reporting our CO2 emissions as part of a program that it is co-lead with the Mexican subsidiary of the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. And even that we don't have a specific, let's say, a regulatory limit for that, but Mexico has the international commitment and set the specific goals to reduce greenhouse gases by year 20, year 30, and year 50. So this is not, I mean, it is that make us that we are just following the company standards and the company policies that has been set worldwide in order to reduce the carbon footprint of our facilities in Mexico. In fact, we are now actively also moving to the use of other sources of energy. One of our plants will start receiving solar energy produced in the state of Sonora next year, and that will help us to cut more than, let's say, initially we're going to have a reduced amount of energy, but that will mean that we will reduce about 5,000 tons of greenhouse gases per year, okay? And this is just to start, and we are moving forward with that initiative in the following years.
Okay, all right. And I'd also like to thank the organizers of this event for not asking me to speak Spanish. It's been a long time since high school. And my favorite statements in Spanish are hablo un poco solamente y habla más despacio, por favor.
Okay.
Okay. A question for, let's continue with sort of the global focus here for questions for Amanda and Matt. How do sustainability challenges in the auto sector compare with those in Europe or Asia or elsewhere in the world?
Well, you know, just like any company, our challenges do vary globally, and we look for ways to mitigate risk, but also ways to reinvest that are going to create long-term value. So one of the areas that we've carved out a real leadership position is in the area of waste. So I'd like to just give you an example from the waste arena. But in the area of waste, we have differences in the level of infrastructure that's available around the world to recycle. So when we're in areas of the world where the infrastructure is not well developed, then we work with regulatory agencies to help them understand what options might be available for those waste streams. And then in areas of the world where the infrastructure is well developed and growing, such as the US or Europe, then what we're really focusing is finding better options for those unique or hard to treat waste streams. So that's one of the ways that, you know, we have to take that into account and vary our approach depending on the region.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'd say measurement is key, Matt, right? So we work with industry and supply chains to improve measurement. So the Global Reporting Initiative is a key step on moving forward there. And we've worked with the OECD in developing a sustainable manufacturing toolkit to help factories wherever they are around the world tune up their operations with metrics where we're measuring all the various wastes, wasted lean waste, like wasted time and motion, but also increasingly so the additional ones, wasted energy, wasted water, wasted materials, wasted chemicals. And it's our ambition, to be a leader in the world. We think we are in many areas in terms of that standard setting. And again, to what the president was calling for yesterday, is more of that international leadership. We can learn from others, but we need to also lead by example.
How realistic is a zero landfill auto plant? I mean, really zero? I mean, how is that accomplished? That's advertised by some automakers. I don't know if the fellow from Subaru is still here, but so. I mean, is that a realistic goal, or is it, what do you think? Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Well, the company has set the goal to have a true zero landfill goal for the facilities in the world. I think that, for instance, in some countries in Europe, because they have a strong drivers, that it is the lack of land, okay, to use as a landfill, okay. They already have 4 plants, they have true zero, real zero waste to landfill, okay. In other areas like Mexico, for instance, we are working hard to do that, and because of the goals set by this program, we are reducing, and we have reduced substantially the amount of materials or waste that has been sent to landfill. Okay, and we think, and we're strongly convinced that a true zero can be real. Okay, but it needs a lot of effort, and also it needs that some technology will bring to the country that makes business sense, really, to do that, to make that final disposition to another waste different than landfill. Okay.
How about the GM perspective?
Well, I concur with everything that was just said, that a lot depends on the infrastructure that's available. So as the infrastructure grows for recycling opportunities, then your opportunity to recycle obviously goes up. With issues like regulatory barriers, we also have to keep communication lines open with the agencies so that we can understand what options might be available for things that right now are prohibited from other types of options. I think one of our focuses as a company has been obviously increasing recycling and reuse across the board. And our definition of landfill-free focuses on the daily operational waste for manufacturing operations. So where our facilities are landfill-free, what we're saying is that all of our daily operational waste, we found a way to either recycle or reuse. And one of the things that is also our focus is to keep as many of those items out of the waste to energy arena. So we work hard, and overall, globally, we have less than 3% of our waste going to waste to energy facilities. So it is possible, and we do it. And I think that we have different challenges on achieving those goals depending on where you are in the world.
Matt, on the regulatory aspect, with the requirements of REACH for consumer goods, it's interesting because, as Louis mentioned about the lack of space in Europe and the recyclability, and now that the automotive industry is really thriving in North America, I think we're becoming a net exporter of vehicles from North America to other continents. So that's becoming an issue about the content of the materials that make up the vehicle.
I was going to ask you, as an environmental consultant, trained as a toxicologist, I guess, right?
That's correct.
How do you approach these issues with the manufacturer? I mean, both in terms of recycling and in terms of use of less toxic material. What the waste stream consists of. But how do you approach this?
Well, that's what I talked about in the beginning of the talks here this morning. It's first you have to quantify what's going on at the facility, what's in the materials, and one of the challenges we have, of course, is we're capturing in our software right now, a lot of the OEMs we're working with, about, say, 78% of the material processed through the facility. But you have to understand that a lot of the materials are pre-finished. They call them assembly plants. Well, that's what they are. There's certain components that are actually being chemicals being applied, like in the paint operation and that. But then, what is in actual those kits that go into the vehicles? And these days, as we all know, we have a huge demand for electronic gadgets in our vehicles. So there's a lot more electronics, which means more metals and more hazardous products. So no, it's a big challenge. That's something that we're working on with the OEMs and the supply chain to capture the information. That's the first step.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I have a question from a Lauren A. Kastner. I guess this would be for GM and Ford that are here. How have your companies successfully incorporated sustainability as a criterion in choosing suppliers? How do you weigh sustainability against other criteria in choosing suppliers? Like price, I would imagine, for one thing.
Possibly.
Sure.
Okay,
Flip a coin.
Okay. I would also like to provide some background to answer that question. And if I remember well, back in 1998, the company decided that all its manufacturing facilities worldwide get ISO 40001 certification.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The company also asked that all the tier 1 suppliers have that certification. And I think that this was the first and very important steps to sustainability in the supply chain. Okay? After that, many other steps has been taken. Okay? But the basis was set many years back. Okay? When the company established a policy that if you want to be and continue to be a Ford supplier, you should be recognized by a third party as an environmentally good and friendly company. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And that policy is being applied now, and every supplier that supplies parts to Ford, okay, it's has to demonstrate that has some policies and system established that goes aligned with the sustainability policy of the company. Okay, excuse me.
Okay.
We also have similar criteria, and I think that one of the things that we also do is something that you mentioned, where we try to drive to drive sustainability in the supply chain by working with supply chain in different environments. So working with the supply chain in the suppliers partnership, where we can exchange best practices and network. Working with the supply chain through the form of AIAG, where we sit as co-chair on the Greenhouse Gas Advisory Panel, which works on greenhouse gas reporting for the supply chain, but also greenhouse gas reductions in the supply chain. And then when we have our Supplier of the Year ceremonies, we feature Environmental Excellence Awards and Sustainability Awards to underscore the importance of this to our suppliers and also inspire our suppliers to achieve higher objectives and innovative projects and help us reduce our environmental impact and raise the level of the industry as a whole in terms of its environmental performance.
Mm-hmm.
Matt, if I could just jump in here on
Sure,
that
yeah,
point.
absolutely.
This gets at really an important evolution that's happened over, I think, the last 10 years, and that is the nexus, sustainability being the triple bottom line, profit, people, and planet. The nexus between making money and this environmental stewardship. We've had for so long this kind of false choice presented, and what's happened the last 10 years, and I'd like to hear what my colleagues here think, is we're getting closer to a tipping point where folks see that there is a clear nexus. You can make a lot of money and be a good environmental steward. And that's the exciting trend that we've seen over several years, and it really hits home in the supply chain, and where our technical assistance has been in part a part of the equation to help fill the gap for medium and smaller suppliers who need the kind of tune-up to improve their processes, make more money, but do it in a way that's good for people, jobs, and reducing pollution.
Yeah, I'd just like to add to that sharing best practices is another important way because, so for example, we've hosted workshops where we work with our suppliers about incorporating renewable energy and energy efficiency into the operation of their buildings. And of course, that drives down the bottom line costs for them, which they are then able to pass on to us. So you have the environmental benefit, but you also have the fact that all these sustainability efforts are lessening your risk, but they're also giving you revenue sources and decreasing costs. So,
I have an example. Almost 20 years ago, we were working with the furniture industry, one of the first regulated under the Clean Air Act, and they had to come in with compliant coatings, HAPS-free or low HAPS, and they were scared to death that the price of the coatings would go up, and they also had work practice standards to implement under the EPA guidelines, and they found out eventually after a few months or a year working that they actually started having reduction of coating usage and vis-a-vis the training of the operators and the type of coatings that we're using. So the net gain of, as you said, they're actually were saving money and had better practices in place.
Okay, I've got a couple of questions here from the audience that have been submitted via email and Twitter, but I also want to open it up to anyone here at Oakland University who might have a question. If anyone wants to be the first brave soul to raise their hand, feel free at any time. I have a question from the audience. Steve Hellum, thank you. What actions are being taken to address global water challenges? That's something we don't always think about here in Detroit, where we're sitting on a good chunk of the world's fresh water here. It's not as important here as it is in some other places. So, Luis, you want to get us started on that?
Sure, thank you. Well, again, when you are driven by the conditions in which you live and operate, okay, you are more than motivated to also implement aggressive action plans like the ones that we have implemented in Mexico. In our Mexican facilities, we have set the goal that fresh water, it's only used for personal consumption. The rest of the water should come from different sources. Most of that will come directly from our wastewater treatment plants, and we recycle that. We just, let's say, make up that water to have the quality enough to be recycled in the process. And if in case that we need more water to attend the process demand, in some areas we just buy recycled water and add into the process to that end. By doing that, the Mexican facilities are really among the best in the world in consuming the water per unit produced. And we have already reached the status in our Chihuahua engine plant, okay, that water is only used for personal consumption. We are about to reach that. We believe that in 2014 we are going to get there in Cuautitlán and in Hermosillo also. And again, water is a very important element. Also, another point that it is important to consider is that when you are saving water, you are also saving energy. And when reducing carbon footprint, it's something that needs to be considered and has to be kept in mind. Because in order to have water available, a substantial amount of energy is spent in order to have that water available. Let me just give you an example. For instance, in Mexico City and suburban area, about 40% of the potable water comes from dams that are located more than 200 kilometers away from the city. But not only that, they are 1,000 meters below the Mexico City level. So the energy that it is needed to have the water available at any home, it is a considerable, it's a very intensive energy process. So by reducing your water consumption, okay, you are reducing also your carbon footprint.
Okay.
Well, GM has established 2020 manufacturing commitments, and what we did is we took a look at what are some of the key performance indicators from a sustainability perspective for our operating facilities. And then around those key performance indicators, we established goals. And one of the goals we have is globally to reduce our water intensity 15% by 2020 on a global basis. But when we do get into water-stressed areas, such as Mexico, I can give you an example of our San Luis Potosi plant. There, we've installed a system to minimize the water withdrawal so that we're withdrawing less water from the aquifer. And what we've done is installed a system that allows us to recycle 90% of the water. So it's a significant reduction in terms of the stress that we're putting on the area.
Matt, I was just going to say, I really appreciated Luis's point about water and energy. And for the Oakland University students here, it's really important, I think, to think in a multidisciplinary approach. That's really I think one of the big values adds of this developing science of sustainability is that it's not just water, but it's water and energy and materials. It starts to, one affects the other in this complex mosaic. So I think that's really an important way to look at each issue as we go forward.
Okay, I've got a couple of questions here from Twitter that I'm going to get to in just a second, but I've been wanting to ask this one myself for a while. I know not one of you is in marketing, but I know, you folks are in the car business, right? So what you're selling is freedom and personal mobility and fun to drive and all that good stuff. We've seen fuel economy become an important selling point. Can green sell? Can green sell? I mean, can that move the vehicle? The fact that you can point to it and say this is a green vehicle, or this vehicle was manufactured in a green way.
Right.
Whoever wants to start.
I'd say that we've been driving an electric vehicle for about 2.5 years up in Montreal, and the problem we see is that the vehicle looks like a regular vehicle, so nobody knows the difference except for the plate in the back. That's the green license plate. Education, I think this is a perfect setting. We're in a university here. Is the key, is that greening, like you said, our way of getting around. And people don't realize that you don't really need a huge range on the battery to get to work or to get to home and that. When I was looking at the electric vehicle, I looked at, they were saying in the US, 75% of our commutes are under 40 miles per day. And that was the range of the vehicles. I said, that's perfect. And to be honest with you, it is working fantastic. We have reduced our gasoline consumption by 95%.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so can green sell? What do you think?
Well, I think consumers really do drive sustainability, and so as a company, you have to offer a wide range of technology options that are still going to meet their needs, because ultimately the consumer wants a product first that meets their needs, that's functional. And so we keep striving to raise the bar in terms of the technology options that are available so that we can produce greener vehicles that still meet the customer's expectations in terms of function and performance.
And I think that's an important point, right? I think we are on this glide path that like your question in some way assumes that it's a choice, right? I think so. You've been studying that, I'm sure, reporting on advanced manufacturing. That's a great example of an emerging innovation, a technology that will be better. The efficacy is as good or better,
right?
With a 90% less energy use, 50% less material use. Now we're talking, so it's not just a one-for-one trade, it's improvement, it's innovation. These are new products and processes where it's not a trade-off.
Okay. Well, as it has been mentioned here, there is a big variety of technologies available into the market. And I think that people now is really more conscious about its personal footprint, okay? And because of that, the people is looking for more efficient vehicle in terms of the footprint that the vehicle has. Okay, it has in its manufacturing processes, but also the footprint that the vehicle has during the time of the use and at the end of its life. Okay, it had been discussed here how complicated and all the diverse issues that comes once that the vehicle reaches its end of life. So that makes people really think about, well, what is my best choice? Okay, a vehicle that was produced under certain conditions, that during the terms of use, what is the carbon footprint that I am personally going to set by using this kind of vehicle, and at the end of its life, what is going to happen with that? Mm-hmm. Definitively, this is something that it is becoming a criteria that the people is following before they just buy a product.
Well, and as a consumer, I can tell you, apropos of what Matt was saying, it doesn't have to be a trade-off. I have driven the Volt, which is a blast to drive, and my wife and I just got a C-Max hybrid from Ford, and that thing is a trip, man. That's roller skate handling, and it accelerates like a jackrabbit. It's a lot of fun. If you haven't been in one, check it out. They're a lot of fun to drive. From Tom Carpenter on Twitter, a question: how is the auto industry designing products for disassembly and recycling to reduce end-of-life issues? Amanda?
Well, in general, our vehicles are about 85% recyclable by weight, and certainly it is, a continuing effort in terms of building the products so that they are recyclable at the end of life, and we certainly have a focus on that, and also in terms of incorporating recyclable materials into the build in the first place. And I already shared with you some examples of where we've done that. So it's a continual process. It's a continual drive.
Okay. Yeah, the end-of-life vehicle is always keep in mind when a vehicle is designed, okay? And it's a continuous process, okay, in which materials are improved and the toxic contents in the material are limited and reduced or completely eliminated, okay, depending on the progress that the technology has. But definitively, our products are being designed with that in mind, and hopefully sometime, I don't know how long, but hopefully sometime 100% of the vehicle in any part can be totally recyclable and reuse it in producing another goods, okay, mm-hmm. and eliminate totally the waste of a vehicle has.
Okay. How much of your consulting work is done on that? Any of it, or on end-of-life issues?
Well, we're actually part of the group here that works on the material assessment strategies with the SP. We are looking at what's going through the OEMs and the supply chain and the challenges, but this is something that is fairly new. There's also another area that I guess companies are starting to get into is the green chemistry aspect. Mm-hmm. So looking at the origination of the raw materials before it even ends up into a part that ends up in the vehicle. So it's exciting times actually right now.
Yeah. We're still going to need car crushers at some point though, right? So
eventually.
Okay. I covered one of those about 1 million years ago when I was a reporter in Kalamazoo here in Michigan, and that was I don't think that one was run particularly well because it was
one other thing that's changing is with the CAFE standards for the miles per gallon on the fleets. What was it?
54.5 miles per gallon
right.
by 2025. Yeah.
So the car manufacturer are going to have to reduce the weight of the vehicle right. somewhat, and there's a lot of research I'm hearing about into materials to reduce the weight. So that's going to change again the recipe of what's going into the plant. And
yeah. Okay, a question on Twitter from someone that goes by the handle Shems. How do you use life cycle assessment methodology and tools to support sustainability efforts? I guess you're talking about PLM. So.
Oh, actually, right now, what we're doing is we're trying to, in our environmental management solution, we're trying to capture all the information that is ending up in the vehicle and produce some type of report on the toxicity of, as they were talking about, initially on the SPBD there this morning, and produce some kind of scorecard, so we'll know how hazardous. Because you're not just looking at the individual components, you're looking at the whole vehicle and where it's going to end up. And we're talking a lot about the crusher, and and it's a challenge because it's not a very simple solution to look at the whole vehicle and what's the toxicity of those parts off of the vehicle.
Sure. We have a question here.
Yeah, it looks as though I'm the first, but okay, that's fine. Coming back to the subject of... coming back to the subject you just addressed on end of vehicle life, excuse me. Other parts of the world, and this is a global industry, of course, Europe and to some degree, a large degree, of course, Asia. What would you say are one or two lessons learned that you can take away or bring away from end of vehicle legislation that's been invoked for several years in Europe and Asia, and bring that here, and how does that help?
You might rather not have the microphone on that one? Okay. All right.
Gentlemen first.
We are seeing an excess of professional courtesy here.
Well, I think that this is a really very good question, and I think that experiences are shared all over the world, and I think that lessons learned from the world are applied in all the places. Let me just give you an example. I am part of the Environmental Quality Office at Ford Motor Company, and we are a global organization, okay? We are organized in regions, and we just met every week or every 2 weeks and have our typical, let's say, reviews, management reviews, but also we have sessions in which we just share experiences, and we learn a lot from each other. For instance, we have learned a lot from our European colleagues about how to reduce and eliminate waste. And they have learned a lot from us, I think a lot, in the water management programs that we have implemented. So these are really very good examples of interchanges and lessons learned. And also, I think that by participating in groups like this, in which we have a diverse and a big variety of companies that are participating, suppliers from all over the world, and with that we also have the opportunity to interact with our colleagues, okay? These are more than an experience, and all the lessons learned are invaluable.
Well, I can't answer that question specifically because I don't know everything. But what I can tell you is from a process standpoint that we do share our best practices globally. So if one region of the world is doing something different that is driving sustainability to the next level, then it actually pulls up the entire company because we do distribute those practices and share those best practices globally. So that is a good question, but I think any global organization, and you discussed that in your answer, does that, where they try to to make sure their progress is balanced on a global basis, and that it's targeting the highest performance on a global basis.
Matt, I want to jump in here on this. It's an excellent question because it in some ways it raises the issue, is the solution in government? Mm-hmm. And government's a part of the solution. Best practices from different legislation that informs what we do in each of our jurisdictions for sure. But we've also got to recognize how much success we've had with voluntary standards in terms of think of your light fixtures and the UL certifications. I talked about Energy Star earlier. There's so many successes we already have with the voluntary standards development. As we get better science about life cycle impacts, that will inform these voluntary standards. We're working, our scientists and engineers are working in the space of helping to improve voluntary standards for products in certain sectors. We're developing a labeling program for safer chemicals in products right now that you could go to the store. You can go to the store right now and see this label and know that you're buying a cleaning product, for example, that has safer chemicals in it. Well, that's an example of these voluntary standards that are in all kinds of sectors, to include the products that are used in our cars. So I think for students here, it's good to know that government plays a role in setting certain markers of minimum performance. But already we have all kinds of public-private partnerships where it's not required. It's just business practice that you have to meet a certain certification by a private group with standards that have been developed together by all kinds of stakeholders. So we have a lot of success to build on, but we have a lot of things to build out.
Okay, we have 5 minutes left, time for just a couple more questions. You, sir.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. I'm Randy Leslie, and I'm with Johnson Controls, but I'm also the chairperson for Suppliers Partnership for the Environment. I want to thank this panel for certainly being here with us today. Quick question for you. Speed is a competitive advantage in our industry, and Benjamin started off by citing that it's been a long journey. What can we do differently to, in fact, increase the speed, but where we're bringing the environmental actions into place to, in fact, create a better and a more sustainable world, but also a competitive advantage for all of us? I'd be interested in hearing your thoughts there.
It sounds like you really want to say something.
I think that when you look at the environmental arena, these companies, their competitors, obviously selling cars, but working cooperatively towards common goals. That's, I think, the key. And we saw that, like I said, over 20 years ago with the furniture industry grouping together with the US EPA, the trade agencies, and the supplier chain to develop a system that would actually work for the whole industry. And I think that's really key.
Yeah, I mean, just to add to that, I think that more and more companies are integrating sustainability into their business model. So, you can see that, when we're trying to grow our business around the world, we have sustainability incorporated into every action that we're taking in terms of that progress. So, I think that there's actually a natural acceleration curve that comes off of that, because as you integrate sustainability into your business model, it becomes part of your engagement strategy with those you're interacting with, such as your supply base. And as that becomes part of your engagement strategy, as we've discussed here, then it's the logarithmic growth of all of those folks focused in the same direction. So I think actually we're already on that path, and I think it's an exciting time for that reason.
Have a question back here in my blind spot. Need that backup camera? Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Larry Burkowski. I'm president of a company called Wellman Engineering Resins. And our whole company, the whole company is basically a sustainability story. I don't know how many of you know Wellman, but we collect carpet up and down the East Coast, and maybe eventually we'll do it around the country. And we collect it from contractors that work for Home Depot or Lowe's or the big carpet companies. And that carpet, if we weren't doing the business we do, would be landfilled. So we buy it from them for pennies on the dollar, because then we transform it into plastic pellets, which then go back primarily into the auto industry. And I mean, the company's been a big success story, primarily because there's one OEM, Ford Motor Company, who gets the sustainability aspect of it. Is that the carpet has its, the nylon in the carpet has its primary use as your floor material, and then after 10 or 20 years you want a new color or a new type of floor, so you take that carpet out, and Wellman has figured this fiber is useful back into the auto industry. But you know, my question is, how does Wellman take this from being primarily a Ford story, and we're having some success at the other OEMs. And when I hear things like sustainability, and there's a lot of greenwashing, I think the initiatives that you take at your plants, so you don't landfill product from your plants at GM or Chrysler or whatever, is a good one. But when you can think about the impact of not landfilling carpet because there's a second generation use for it, that has a much bigger impact than just the stuff that maybe goes to a landfill from your manufacturing operation. Because now you're talking all the consumers and all the carpet. So I'm just looking for, maybe now or at lunch or later, just some advice, because, or a platform maybe for us to help the engineers at the OEM specify our materials more. There's sometimes a fear of recycle. Like, recycle has a great word if you're an environmentalist, but if you're not an environmentalist, people think recycle might be like a shoddy material or something, which in our case it isn't, because Ford wouldn't be using it in cam covers and things like that. So I just wanted to have my 2 cents with this audience.
Well, I'll give you my quick take on that. So 2 things. One is doing what you're doing is proving it up on the metrics, making a boatload of money by being smart about the environment. And then the other part is the teamwork part. And this is a great, compliment to the suppliers partnership for the environment, because it's working together as a team and then communicating more broadly to universities like Oakland University that were here, to other stakeholders in schools, in factories, and communities around the country. That's where we see government as having a role in terms of convener and help get that message out. But it's going to take an all-hands-on-deck approach in terms of measuring it, so it avoids that whole greenwashing thing. So I'm totally with you on that one. So we have this evolution on measurements, strong metrics now, stronger metrics between profit and the environmental one, but we've got to fill that out. Life cycle's got to be a part of it, a lot of different pieces to that, but we're on the road, over the tipping point, I hope, and then communicating it more broadly. So that's my take. I think you made some good observations.
All right. All right, well, it is 12:34. I realize I am the only thing standing between you and lunch. I do not wish to do that for very long, but I do want to take a moment just to thank our panel here and thank our sponsors here today. Let's give them a hand.